It's 1:30 again. Yes, it is. Hi, hi. Look at my hair. It's so shiny. It's so shiny and bouncing and behaving. We love it. So we're very green today. New green blouse, new green blouse. Yes, yes, yes. Can you hear me? Wait, am I doing this right? Hi, yes. Oh, look, sound. Yes, that always helps enormously. Hi, hi, yes. So I don't have a green bonnet. I have this sort of teal number. Does it clash? I think it kind of looks good. I think it sort of pops. It pops, the color. Happy Monday. It is. It is such a Monday. Oh, the fridge came. The fridge came. Yes, yes, the refrigerator's here. It's big. It's good. The problem is when you get a new fridge, it's not cold. So I take everything out of the fridge. Like, as soon as the guy says he's like one stop away, it's like, okay, take everything out of the fridge, so it's not sitting for a long time, and put things in a cooler with ice and stuff. Like, okay, be fine. Put things in the sink. And then, they take the thing out and they put the thing in, and then it's like, I'm putting stuff back, but it's like, the fridge is warm. So I've cranked it up to cool. It's starting to get cool now, but I'm like crossing my fingers about the mayonnaise. Just saying. So, today is, but it's very pretty. It's white and clean and lovely, and things fit in. It'll be fine. Big freezer. Love it, love it, love it. Okie dokie. Today, indeed, is Monday. It is Monday. It is August 24th. Which is National Maryland Day. Maryland, so if you're in Maryland, hi, it's your day. Every state gets a day, and so it's Maryland. Peach pie. Today is National Peach Pie Day. Now, I was going to go make a peach pie, but I went to the store, and I made sure I had pie crust mix-ins and all that. I went to the store, and the peaches, they were not ripe. They were gorgeous, gorgeous, lovely peaches. They had so many peaches. They simply were not ripe. They were hard as a rock, and you just can't make pie that way. And then I went, these are frozen peaches. And they had one like little tiny bag. So I was like, nope. So bought a pie that someone had made. The fabulous people at Marie Callender's make a mini peach pie. And so this was in the new oven, which is super hot, so it did not take very long. And now I can try this hunk of peach pie. This is like lava. I don't know if I can even eat this. Let's see. Aha! It's been out of the oven for a while. It's still like molten lava. Oh, that's very good. Oh, good. Yes, peaches have a little chewy little bite. Oh, not too sweet. They didn't over sugar it. The peaches are still like tart. All right. Now, is Maryland Day. It is National, oh man, that was good, Peach Pie Day. And it is also National Waffle Day. Waffle Day! And, I was cleaning out the freezer since we're changing fridges, and by golly, I have the last 2 frozen waffles here. And a little bit of syrup. I'm eating them like waffles. I don't really make waffles, but today, a little hot. I think I have 3 waffle irons. I have the round waffle iron, the old-fashioned round one, the big square one, and a Hello Kitty one. I have a Hello Kitty waffle maker. I have 3 waffle makers. But these are indeed quite tasty, and I literally am just like dipping them in maple syrup and butter and going. Jennifer says waffles for dinner. No. You can. I love breakfast for dinner, by the way. Breakfast for dinner is great. Do like bacon and eggs and waffles for dinner. But you can do waffles. You can do a thing with waffles and make like a chicken in a creamy sauce thing, because it's like crepes. You could put like chicken like stuff, stew things on your waffle. That's so good. So yesterday we were talking about Nellie's restaurant, and as I said, the real Nellie Owens didn't really have a restaurant. It was a cafe, and I think it was Diane's. I think it was Diane's Cafe a long time ago. Finally, the people had it said, "What are we crazy? We're missing out a bet here. It It's Nellie's! And just put up a big Nellie sign. And indeed, they're in Walnut Grove, and they're up the road from the museum. And it is Nellie's Little Cafe on the Prairie. And there I am on the menu. Yes, they did. They put my picture on the menu. I'm so happy. There's a little covered wagon on the back. Nellie's Little Cafe on the Prairie. Sandwiches. They have burgers, the Nellie burger. The Nellie burger is, wow, I wouldn't even eat that. That's too many things. Nellie burgers, bacon, lettuce, tomato, beef patty, Swiss cheese, American cheese, mayo, and pickle. So the Nellie burger is everything. I want everything. That's what the Nellie burger is. It's totally everything. A third pound Nellie burger, Swiss and mushroom. Yeah, they have all the usual things. There's all this stuff. There's a kids menu with like hot dogs and things. They have like country fried beef steak. It's all that. It's very country food. Chicken and biscuits, chicken wrap, shrimp and toast. They do hash browns, all that kind of thing. There's a chicken thing here. They do. Ooh, Laura's chicken fillet. That's good with cheese on a sandwich. But they have a chicken thing. They do the chicken in a deep fried. They have a fried chicken that is amazing. And then they have a specialty here. Section, just an entire section of the menu. I mean, they have their side orders, and they got their salads. They got, macaroni salad. They have jello. This is like old country diner food. But right here, pipin', that's P-I-P-I-N apostrophe, not piping. Pipin', hot roasted chicken. Is it broiled? Is it roasted? Oh, wait, it's both. It's roasted chicken, and you can get a breast, a thigh, a drumstick, or a wing. And 20 minutes for preparation. You have to specially order it. Roasted chicken. This is the thing. Most of this is just like, yes, well, it's a burger. Well, the Nellie burger right here is really good. But the roasted chicken. Yes. Get the roasted chicken. Also, on the sandwiches, what did I get that I actually got and was like, whoa, this is really good. I think I got their grilled cheese and was like, yeah. So they do all of that. Oh, look, they have an extensive breakfast menu. And they have cookies and pie. Oh, they do good pie. Nellie's does great pie. Go get the pie. They have ice cream. They have all the usual. They do French toast. They do pancakes. They do, all the usual things. So there you go. And the side, oh yeah, biscuits and sausage gravy. Because they're way out in Minnesota. So they have biscuits and sausage gravy. It's free country. Get the roasted chicken. And I'm on the menu. And if you go there, my picture is like autographed all over the place and everything. And they have they have t-shirts and they have the darling little cups that say Nellie. So advertising the heck out of these nice people. And no, I don't own it. I got a cup. That was like what I got. And they're lovely people. So we like that. So there you are. So that's our days and our menu. And these are really good. You know I didn't get a discount? So I did a discount? You'd think I'd eat there for free. Didn't. Now, they have... I was talking about our fabulous friend, Bill Anderson. So he cranks out the Laura books. Like I said, we read his book. He has these short ones here. Like we have Laura Wilder of Mansfield. It's a little pamphlet prize. Laura Wilder, Mansfield. Life on Rocky Ridge Farm in the town of Mansfield by William Anderson. And it's like focuses on her and her buddies there. Oh, there's that Nita Seal who pulled my hair. And so it focuses on the time in Mansfield. And then you have the story of the Ingalls family. And then you have the Laura Ingalls Wilder Reader, which includes a lot of her poetry. This is good. This is a collection of long-lost stories, poems, and reminiscences by Laura Ingalls Wilder and her family, edited by William Anderson. So that's pretty cool. There's Laura and their dog. Okay, yeah, very nice. This is lovely pictures. A lot of pictures. So that's what he did. In fact, on the back here, other Laura Ingalls Wilder series by William Anderson. The story of the Ingalls family, the story of the Wilders, Laura, a Wilder in the West, Laura's Rose, the Horn Books, Laura Ingalls Wilder, the Iowa story of Laura Ingalls Wilder, the Walnut Grove story. So he details the things. It's a very smart dude. Well, I've ordered a bunch of books, which are all indeed arriving like tonight and tomorrow. But I'm gonna read because we sort of alternate between the hard historical things And then the more fun, like, lighthearted, goofy things, like, we read, like, on the way home that was, like, sad and terrible and miserable. It's 109 degrees in the wagon. And then we read, like, the really fun thing of the Nellie meets Laura that was just, like, hilarious. So, I think we're going to break it up a little here because this is really cute. I was looking at this thing. This is called Prairie Lotus by Linda Sue Park. And it's New York Times best-selling author. And, Newbery medalist, much like Laura. She is a Newbery medalist, so, can't go wrong. And it's widely reviewed here. And look, and it's this darling little girl with her bonnet. It's a Chinese girl, and it's Dakota Territory. 1880, Dakota Territory. So we're out there in the Dakota Territory, like De Smet, and this girl's name's Hannah. And she arrives in LaForge in South Dakota with her dad, who opens a shop on Main Street. But she's half Chinese, so that's the twist. It's but everything is super duper like Laura Ingalls. It's like the little half Chinese Laura and her pa hanging out in De Smet. So it's adorable. So I'm gonna read Prairie Lotus, and we'll see how it goes. But I think it's gonna be fun. This the girl can write. It's well done. So we'll read this, and then we have a bunch of Rose. We got Rose stuff for like days. So we'll do a little Prairie Lotus by Linda Sue Park. Should be our last day, Papa said when they stopped to make camp. Oh, bonnet, right? It's my beautiful teal bonnet. He unhitched the tired horses from the wagon, then led them down a little draw to water, while Hannah began clearing the ground for a fire. They had journeyed for almost a month since leaving Cheyenne, their most recent stretch, in near 3 years of travel. 3 years without a real home. Tomorrow they would reach their destination, LaForge, a railroad town in Dakota Territory. Hannah was looking forward to cooking supper. They had been able to buy groceries in North Platte, but since then it had rained for almost a solid week. They'd had to make do with meal after meal of stale biscuits and cold beans. She had put dried codfish to soak the night before. Soup, she thought, with onions and potatoes. Papa returned with the horses and a bucket of water. He fastened the horses to their picket lines, then left again to gather some brushwood. I'm going to make soup, she told him when he returned to start the fire. About time we had a hot meal, he said. Hannah bristled at the note of petulance in his voice. The dreary weather of the past week was hardly her fault, but she said nothing, not wanting to start a row. Sky's clearing, he said. Maybe it'll be easier to scare up a rabbit or something. He went off with his gun on his arm, his long-legged strides covering the ground quickly. Well, this sounds just like Laura and her pa, stuck out in the middle of nowhere and trying to cook something up when it's pouring rain and cold, and going, maybe pa can kill a rabbit. This sounds very, very Pa and Laura kind of stuff. I'm having more pie. Which that's more better. It's no longer like on fire hot. Oh, it's very good. It's small, so I'm like split one. I'll save the rest for mom. Highly recommend. 3 calendars, peach pie, not bad at all. Hannah watched him till he vanished behind a low rise. The endless prairie looked flat at first glance, but the land was never completely level. Rain had rinsed the gray and beige plains, leaving behind a translucence of green that was growing denser every day. She went into the wagon and opened her trunk. She took out a piece of plain brown wrapping paper, a pencil, a rubber eraser, and a well-worn magazine. The paper had been folded, accordion style, several times and folded across twice. Opened out, the creases formed rectangles about 2 inches wide and 3 inches tall, 3 dozen of them. She's making things. Hannah had used up about half the rectangles on one side of the paper. In each was a small pencil sketch of a dress. Oh, she's making little squares on the paper, so it's like, save up with this one sheet for all her drawings. House dresses, visiting dresses, dresses for church, even ball gowns. She had seen pictures of ball gowns in the Godey's Ladies book. magazine, and it was fun to draw the elegant garments, even though she would never have a chance to see or wear one. Now she leafed through an issue of Godey's, or Goody, Godey, it's Goodies Ladies' Book, isn't it? Goodies Ladies' Book from last summer, the latest she'd been able to get. On page after page there were drawings of every kind of garment. Some were available ready-made. For others, paper patterns and instructions could be mail-ordered. She found pictures of 2 gowns that interested her. She took up her pencil and began to draw, combining the bodice of one dress with the skirt of the other. She also added a trimming of braid around the cuffs and the hem of the bodice. Remember we were in like Little Town on the Prairie and it turned into like a weird fashion book where everything was descriptions of like all of her clothes? It's kind of like that. She eyed the drawing critically. Something wasn't quite right. The skirt was too full for the length of the bodice. She erased the skirt and drew it again, this time with a slimmer profile. Yes, better. For the past 3 years, Hannah had done all the family sewing. Papa brought his coats and jackets. She made his trousers, his overalls, his shirts, his drawers, his nightshirts, as well as her own dresses and undergarments. Using paper patterns that had belonged to Mama, she knew how to adjust measurements to the correct size. She could backstitch, whip stitch, sew buttonholes. When she hemmed a garment or added trimming, her stitches were nearly invisible. With all that experience behind her, she was confident that she could make a dress of her own design, and she intended to try very soon. She loved sketching because it took all her attention. She could stop thinking about the rest of the world for a while. As for sewing, most of the time it was both soothing and satisfying. She hadn't been able to draw or sew for several weeks now. Riding in the wagon, it was too bumpy for fine work, and by the time they stopped to camp, it was almost always too dark. Before long, she had had to put away her drawing things and cook supper. She lifted the 3-legged cast-iron spider from its hook on one of the wagon bows. It was deep enough to make soup for 2 people. Yes, the spider. Now remember that Laura was cooked things. She and Ma cooked things in the spider. It was like for camping. It was a pot. It wasn't too big, but it had the 3 little legs. You plonk it right there in the fire. Spider in hand, she jumped to the ground, took a few steps, and stopped in mid-stride. A group of Indians stood in a loose semicircle between the wagon and the fire. Dun 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 dun. Hannah had seen Indians from the wagon several times, but always at a distance. At such moments, Papa seemed watchful, but not particularly worried. He told her that the government had forced the Indians in this region, most of the members of the Sioux tribe, off the wide open prairie and onto tracts of land reserved for them. They were not allowed to leave that land without special permission from the reservation's Indian agent. Hannah looked over the group quickly. 3 women, the eldest with gray streaked hair, a girl a few years younger than Hannah, and 2 little girls. The women were wearing faded blankets or shawls. They carried cloth sacks or bundles. One had a baby tied to her back. Oh, a papoose! If Laura was here, she'd go, "Give me that papoose!" Remember when she wanted to steal the lady's papoose? She's like, "I want the baby. It's cute. Give me the baby." So what's she going to do? Because a crowd has shown up here. Mothers and daughters. Hannah thought at once of Mama. What would she say or do if she were here? "Hello," she said. I was just going to make soup. Would you like some?" Good girl. Mama had been a great believer in soup. She could conjure delicious soups from nothing but scraps and bones, and she had taught Hannah the secret. One strongly flavored ingredient could make the whole pot of leftovers tasty, and you didn't need much of it. Dried mushrooms, cabbage, garlic were all good. So was dried fish. I think something's happened to Mama. I don't think Mama's around anymore. I think poor little Hannah's lost her mom here. Hannah used the big pot instead of the spider. She cut up the potatoes smaller than usual so they would cook more quickly. The Indians sat on the ground near the fire. Hannah was anxious to serve them, but she forced herself to wait until the potatoes were properly cooked, though. She also found herself hoping that Papa wouldn't return anytime soon. He might frighten them, or maybe the other way around. Hannah had enough spoons for her guests, but only 4 bowls. The oldest of the Sioux women seemed to be the group's leader, so Hannah served her first. She glanced down at the soup in her bowl, then looked up, pursed her lips, and motioned with her chin toward Hannah. Hannah understood at once. She wants to be sure that I eat too. She filled 2 more bowls and handed them out for the rest of the group to share. The 4th bowl was for herself. She sat on the wagon steps to eat near the group, but not with them. The women talked quietly among themselves. And then they have, I think it's phonetic Sioux language here. Oyule West, Sukunya Si, Mina Ota, Minaskuya, Kiti Hishin. That's as close as I can get in Greenish. Hannah wondered what they were saying, but at least she could tell they were enjoying the soup. After the oldest woman tasted it, she said something to the others. Then another woman had a bite and said something else. They each took a second taste and had further conversation. It was just like Mama's friends in Chinatown or the lady visitors at Miss Lorna's boarding house. They were talking about the soup, the ingredients, the flavors. Well, and it sounds like the soup's a hit. This little girl has just made soup, and the old ladies are going, good soup. By the end of the meal, the 2 little girls had grown brave enough to draw closer to Hannah. When she smiled at them, they shrieked in delight and ran back to the others. The women rose to leave. Their leader addressed Hannah, and it says, Wahanpi kin nina west na pidamaya. Her voice was quiet as she nodded at Hannah. Hannah nodded back, hoping it was the right response. Mama always gave guests food to take home. She turned and hurried to the wagon, found an empty flour sack, and put in a few fistfuls of dried beans, then returned to her guests. She handed the sack to the gray-haired elder. The old woman turned and had a brief exchange with her companions. One of them reached into her bundle and pulled something out, and passed it to the leader. She held it at shoulder height. It dangled from her hand. It looked like a string of small white onions, or perhaps bulbs of garlic, braided together by their stems. The old woman nodded at Hannah, then said something that sounded like Timpsina. She gave the braid a little shake. Timpsina? Hannah replied hesitantly. The little girls giggled, and the women smiled. Timpsina, Hannah said again, this time with more certainty. The old woman gave the braid to Hannah, who examined it with interest. The white tubers were clearly some kind of vegetable. The largest at the bottom, well, they were as big as a child's fist. They tapered in size along the length of the braid, the smallest about the size of a walnut. She touched them. It was rock hard. They'd been dried, like Mama used to do with the mushrooms. She looked up to see the old woman watching her closely. The woman pursed her lips again. This time she jerked her chin toward the kettle on the fire. It's as if she's pointing with her lips, Hannah thought. Oh, I cook them in water, she asked. She pointed at the kettle. Shaking her head, the woman motioned toward the kettle again, then toward the sky, tracing the path of the sun from east to west. She held up 3 fingers. 3 days? Hannah said. She can't possibly mean to cook them for 3 days. Kettle, water. Oh, I should soak them for 3 days before I cook them? She made appropriate gestures as she spoke. The old woman smiled and nodded. Then she waved toward one of the empty soup bowls. Soak for 3 days, then use them in soup. At that, the other women broke into murmurs of agreement, and the leader nodded again, approvingly. Thank you, Hannah said. Thank you for the, timpsina. The whole group laughed, and Hannah grinned at them. As the Indians departed, one of the little girls turned her head to stare at Hannah. Her eyes were very dark, almost black, and at the same time bright with curiosity. Hannah and the girl looked at each other for a long time, till the Indians disappeared beyond a rise in the prairie. So yeah, it was like when the Indians came to the house, even when Ma Ingalls was afraid of Indians, she gave them some food, gave them some cornbread, and everybody settles down. And this girl was like, better make soup. Yep. Papa returned without any game. Hannah told him about the visitors. Indians, he said with a frown. Women and girls, she said quickly. They gave me this. She showed him the braid. Oh, prairie turnip, he said. Seen it before in Kansas. What do they taste like? Papa thought for a moment. half turnip, half potato. Tasty enough, as I recall. A pause. Good thing you fed them. Wouldn't want any trouble. Hannah let a moment go by. She didn't want to sound impudent. Oh, not even a hint of trouble, Papa. You can't be too careful when they don't keep their distance, he countered. Minnesota, the Black Hills. We're smack in the middle between the two. She knew what Papa was talking about. For years, there had been bloody skirmishes between the Indians and white people. Like many other tribes, the Sioux had signed a treaty with the U.S. government promising that white settlers would not encroach on Indian land. Every single treaty had been broken by settlers or the government or both. I don't blame them for fighting back, Hannah said. It's just not fair. Oh, she sounds exactly like Laura. She's like, well, this is their land. What are we doing here? That's not the point, Papa said. He made a wide sweep with his arm, almost a full circle. Most of the land around here used to be part of the Great Sioux Reservation. They left it as it was, all wild and unfarmed, so why shouldn't folks settle here? The land ought to go to people who work to improve it. That means farming, railroads, businesses, churches, schools. You want those things, you got to have somewhere to build them. Okay, her pa is totally Ma Ingalls. It's totally Ma. Well, if those darn Indians aren't going to build nothing, we ought to move on in. This was totally a conversation in Kansas, in Little House on the Prairie. They totally had the same conversation. Hannah did not want those things. She did want those things, Hannah did want those things. She especially wanted to go to school. She wondered why it wasn't possible for whites and Indians to share the land somehow. But she already knew from living in California that most white people didn't like having neighbors, Chinese, Indians, Mexicans who weren't white themselves. Well, she'd already been in California. Hannah wrapped the prairie turnips in a clean feed sack. Her next thought surprised her. They all had black hair. I haven't seen so many people with black hair since we left Chinatown in Salt Lake. She drew in a long breath. And there won't be anywhere we're going either. She knows, because she was living in Chinatown. That's in California. She was probably in Chinatown, maybe in San Francisco. And she was in Chinatown in Salt Lake City. So she's just around all Chinese people, even in the Wild West. Did you guys ever watch the show Deadwood? My buddy Jerry Jewell. Deadwood, there was a series, and then they did a TV movie. Very good show, very well done, all about the Dakota Territory. Ian McShane's in it, but they do nothing but swear. Like the whole show, it's just like bleep bleep bleep. If they put it on regular TV, it would just be bleep like the entire hour. But it's totally about a terrible rough town in Dakota Territory. Just everybody's constantly. But they talk about the Chinese railroad workers and the Indians. It's fascinating. A lot of good history. But they're really mean and they swear a lot. But other than that, it's really good, Deadwood. So as Papa drove the wagon up the wide main street, Hannah rose from her seat at the back and peeked around the edge of the canvas cover. She saw packed dirt streets and buildings of raw lumber identified by hand-lettered signs. A dry goods store, a hardware store, a saloon, a feed store. There was even a furniture shop, a rarity in these hinterlands. It seems like a nice enough place. Oh, it's kind of like DeSmet. They're kind of like arriving at DeSmet kind of thing. Wishful thinking, maybe. LaForge was a little different from the other frontier towns she'd seen. The railroad at the north end, with Main Street at a right angle to it, leading to the livery at the south end. A brand new town. Equal measures of promise and uncertainty. Like the thin April sunshine in which it stood. The hotel was near the depot. Pa got the maroon for the night. Hannah climbed the stairs along the outside of the building, carrying a valise and a sack atop a wooden box. With her bonnet tied on firmly and the load piled high in her arms, her face was mostly hidden from view. Papa followed her into the room with his own valise. All right, he asked. She set her belongings down and nodded. He went to the window and pulled the curtain across. Livery next, he said. I won't be long. He would take their horses, Chester, the roan, and Cherry, the sorrel mare, to be boarded at the livery and park the wagons there too. He didn't have to tell her to stay away from the window, out of sight. She knew what to do. after so many months and so many towns. Papa always thought it best that he acquaint himself with a few folks and set up either a dry goods or a tailoring business before people found out about her. Ooh, plot thickens. Dun 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 dun. And same as always, she couldn't stop herself from hoping maybe this would be the last move for her and Papa. The last time she would have to hide her face on arriving in a new town. She closed the door behind him and turned the key in the lock. Then she crossed the room and put the wooden box on the bed. Work would make the time go faster. Mama's button box was one of the few things from the shop in Los Angeles that had made the long journey with them. During the trip, the box had been jostled and overturned completely more than once. She unlatched the little hook, lifted the lid, and saw what she'd suspected. Buttons all jumbled together willy-nilly. Oh, rotten eggs, she muttered, using Mama's favorite curse. Oh, they're very polite. Yes, these people are not like in Deadwood. They say things like, rotten eggs. Papa had made the box to Mama's design. It was a rectangular tray covered with a hinged lid and fitted with a wooden grid that divided the space inside into dozens of compartments. The largest button box Hannah had ever seen, it held the hundreds of buttons that Mama had collected for years. Hannah cherished the button box because it belonged to Mama. Every inch of space in the wagon was needed for traveling essentials, so most of Mama's things had been left behind. And her most prized possession, an enormous mirror fixed to the wall, could not be moved at all. Hannah had managed to rescue the button box and Mama's favorite woolen shawl, brown with a red plaid pattern. Hannah emptied the buttons onto the bed. She began by digging through the pile and putting one button into each compartment, rows by size, columns by color. The square in the lower left corner contained the smallest white button. Above it, she put the next size, also white. Each square held a bigger button until she reached the top left, which held the largest white button. In the next column, she put cream-colored buttons. Oh, man, there's going to be a lot of buttons. This is going to be a huge button box. Then beige, then shades of brown, gray, black. After that came the rainbow colors, red, orange, yellow, shades of green and blue, and finally violet. Several more columns and rows held novelty buttons, shaped like animals or stars or cherries. You know, I have a button box. I do. I have it's not that big. But I have a sewing kit, and I have a little thing of buttons. And some of them are very old and belong to my Auntie Marion or my grandma. And there's some really nice one. But I use them. I go, oh, I got a button. I'll use one of these. Sorry. The buttons were pretty to look at and pleasantly smooth under her fingertips. The orderliness of each button in its proper place was soothing. Best of all, sorting the buttons kept her occupied. She put the last few buttons in their compartments, then closed the lid and latched it. She ran her finger over the carving on the lid. A simple 5-petaled lotus. Mama's favorite flower. It was her trademark. She would use tiny, lazy-daisy stitches to embroider a lotus in the lining of every garment she made. And she had taught Hannah to do the same. Hannah had never actually seen a lotus plant, but Mama had shown it to her in Chinese paintings and on ceramic vases. Hannah still had the first little lotus flower she had ever embroidered. Pressed carefully into the Bible Miss Lorna had given her when they left Los Angeles, was a square of plain muslin with 2 lotuses, one done by Mama as an example, and the other by 7-year-old Hannah. Mama's stitches were even, symmetrical, with perfect tension. Those by Hannah were wobbly and uncertain, but Mama had praised her effort, and since then, Hannah had embroidered a lotus countless times, always striving to make hers as even and graceful as Mama's. I wonder how old she is now. So she's 7, and they've been on the road. Okay, I think she's like 10, because she said they're going like running around for like 3 years. Okay, like 10. Hannah was putting away the button box when Papa's boots thudded on the stairs. "Is there a school?" Hannah asked. It was always her first question. Some of the towns they had passed through didn't have a school yet. Those that did, they hadn't stayed in long enough for her to enroll. Papa took off his hat and hung it on a nail near the door. He was tall and lean, and his knees and elbows jutted out when he sat on the room's only chair. I forgot to ask," he said. I I had more important things on my mind. I'll give you the bad news first. There are already 2 dry goods stores, a tailor and a shirt maker here in town. She knew why it was bad news. No town this size needed 3 dry goods stores or 2 shirt makers. Now Papa was almost not quite smiling. 2 dry goods stores, plus a furniture store. That tells me there are already plenty of women here. During the endless months of travel from Los Angeles to La Forge, Hannah and Papa had passed through town after town, populated largely by menfolk. The farther west on the frontier, the fewer the women. In traveling east, Hannah and Papa had finally reached country where more women were living. Hannah realized what Papa was saying. "There's no dressmaker!" she exclaimed. "I signed a 1-month lease for a building on 2nd Street, and I bought the last vacant lot on Main. We'll get a shop built and set up to sell dress goods." "And make dresses," she said, her voice edged with defiance. They had argued about this before. It had been fine when she was just a helper at a shop in Los Angeles. But Papa thought that at 14, she's 14 already. Good heavens, talking about being 7, like how long? So she's 14, she's a big girl. 14, but she was too young for the full responsibility of making dresses for grown women. I don't know, how old was Laura teaching kids her own age at school? And she was sewing, and Mary and Laura were sewing at that age. There you go, she's getting started. He went on as if she hadn't spoken. "The drugstore's on one side and a general store on the other. There'll be plenty of traffic on that part of the street." "That sounds fine, Papa," she said. She would keep quiet for now, but she was already scheming to change his mind. You bought the lot?" she asked, trying to make her words sound like a simple curiosity. "You questioning my decision?" His voice rose in querulousness that she knew could easily become anger. No, Papa," she said firmly, looking him in the eye. It was true. Papa had his faults, but he was a shrewd businessman. "I'm just wondering, why now? Why this place?" Since selling the shop in Los Angeles, they had always lived and worked in rented buildings. He nodded. The glint of anger in his eyes faded slowly. "A couple of reasons. First, because of Harris." A man named Philip Harris was the reason that Hannah and Papa had come to Dakota. Papa had met him years earlier in Kansas. At the end of last winter, when they decided to leave Cheyenne, Papa heard that Mr. Harris was justice of the peace in La Forge. "A good man," Papa had said. "A fair man. Might as well go there as anywhere else." "He'll do his best to see that we get a fair shake here," he went on. "I'm figuring on giving it until fall. If the shop doesn't do well, we can sell up and move on. There'll be plenty of buyers, town right on the railroad and growing fast." Hannah nodded, more than satisfied. "Until fall. That's time enough for at least 1, maybe even 2 terms of school." As a young man, barely out of his teens, Papa had left his home in Tennessee to travel west, and eventually ended up in Colorado Territory during the gold rush near Pikes Peak. Oh, Pikes Peak, that's very famous in the gold rush. He had worked hard and been lucky, doing very well for himself. When the rush was over, he took a job as a supplier for the railroad. He kept moving, finally reaching Los Angeles, where he couldn't go any farther west, and set up as a trader, dealing mostly in dry goods. A year or so later, he met Mama, and they fell in love. It should have been a simple story. Oh, but it wasn't, because Mama was Chinese. So Papa's from Tennessee. He's white. So that's why he goes first into the town and says, "Oh, yeah, I'm here to open a store," because the daughter is half Chinese, and in some towns in 1880, there you go. Mama was Chinese, orphaned as a toddler in China. Mama had been taken in by American missionaries. Her Chinese name was Mei Li. The missionaries called her May. They taught her to sew and to read and write as well. She grew up entranced by their books and the stories of their homeland. When she was 18, she convinced them to let her make the journey to the land that was then known as Gamsan, Gold Mountain. One of the missionaries had a sister who ran a boarding house in Los Angeles. That was where May stayed when she first arrived in America with Miss Lorna. She cleaned house, helped with the meals, and took in sewing. Then a young man came to board at Miss Lorna's place. He was setting up a dry goods shop just outside Chinatown, and he needed a seamstress. May went to work for the young man, whose name was Ben. Papa. The riots in Los Angeles happened when Hannah was 5 years old. By then they were living above the shop. She wasn't old enough to understand, but she was plenty old enough to remember. Shouts in the street. Someone pounding on the door. More shouting. "Take her to Miss Lorna's," Mama said to Papa. "You go. You can both stay there," Papa said. No, you. Safer with you." Papa held Hannah's hand and pulled her through the streets filled with people running, shouting, and screaming. The air smelled strongly of smoke. Sometimes Papa picked her up and ran, dodging crowds of people who looked angry or frightened, or both. He left her with Miss Lorna. "I'll be back for her as soon as I can," he said over Hannah's head. "I'll keep her as long as you need," Miss Lorna said. "You're not to worry about her." Hannah stayed at Miss Lorna's for what felt like forever, but it was really only a few days before Papa returned. The news was bad. At least 15 Chinese men had been lynched. Chinese-owned houses and businesses had been ransacked, looted, burned. While Papa stood guard at his shop, Mama had gone to check on her friends. In trying to help them save their noodle shop, she had been overcome by smoke and collapsed. They had riots where they tried to kill all the Chinese people in town. Terrible. 1800s. Papa brought her home. He and Hannah nursed her as best they could, but her lungs were badly damaged. The sounds of her coughing and wheezing and gasping filled the house every hour, day and night. Each cough made Hannah flinch, imagining the pain her mother was feeling, the constant, desperate strain for something as simple as air. Mama struggled for 6 years after that. On a cold, rainy morning in February, a few months before Hannah's 12th birthday, a thick silence woke her. She got out of bed and saw the door to her parents' room was ajar. She peeked around the edge of the door. Mama was lying on a quilt on the floor. She was curled up on her side, and Hannah could see her face, so calm and sweet that she was almost smiling. Sitting on the edge of the bed in his nightshirt, Papa cleared his throat, then looked up and saw Hannah. "She must have gotten out of the bed in the middle of the night," he said. "She didn't wake me. I never felt or heard a thing." Hannah tiptoed into the room and sat down at the foot of the bed. "Where your mama came from, a lot of people sleep on the floor," he said. "Only rich people have beds." Hannah's eyes were watering. She wiped away the tears with the sleeve of her nightgown. "Is that what she was doing, Papa? Sleeping the way she used to?" "Partly, maybe. But I think she knew somehow the end was coming, and she didn't want... She knew that no one likes to sleep in a bed where someone has died." He shook his head. "Always had to be thinking of someone else, and look where it got her. Oh, this is so sad. This is so sad. Her mother died, but there you go with your mother. She didn't want to wake him, and she didn't want him to wake up and find her, so she got up and lay down on the floor." Oh. Hannah hoped that the anger in his voice was just his way of sorrowing. She concentrated on looking at Mama's face. So peaceful. Her last present to me. To know she was at peace when the end came. The wave of grief that swept over Hannah receded a little when she realized that the terrible wheezing sounds had stopped at last. It was awful. 3 weeks later, Papa sold the shop and bought a wagon. They packed up and left to search for a place to live that would be free of Mama's ghost, the memory of her sickness, her death, and the riot that had eventually killed her. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is like super, super sad, terrible. It's very well done. It's very good, though. And it's, well, like Laura's books, people die and terrible things happen. You know, women of a certain generation thought like that. I know my Auntie Marion, she died. She was 77. She had, it was very sad. She had liver cancer. It was awful. She got sick, and you hardly knew she was sick. She went to the doctor and was like, "Oh, apparently I'm sick," because she never complained. And when Auntie Marion got too sick to be at home, I remember they came with a sort of a medical ambulance transport to take her to a nursing home. And I remember she said, oh, I better get dressed and I'll shave my legs. And she said, I have to go shave I said, you're shaving your legs. You're going to the convalescent home. You have to shave your legs. Well, yes, the nice men from the ambulance. She got dressed up and like put on makeup before she got in the ambulance. Then, when she was at the convalescent home, she had visitors and she was so sweet. She could have had a private room. She totally had the massive insurance. Could have had the private room. She had a room with 2 other women because she wanted someone to talk to, and she would cheer them up. It was just crazy. And then, when it got towards the end, she had a little toy dog. There was a darling little boy, 9 years old, used to visit her. She had a lot of friends with kids, and the kids all loved Annie Marion. And he had brought her his little red dog. It was that what was that? The big red dog. That one. She had a little red dog. And he came to visit, and she said, I think you have to take the dog home. And he said, wow, you don't want the dog? Remember, he was only 9. She said, oh, no, you need to take the dog home. Well, he's been barking and keeping the other patients awake, and he runs around and gets underfoot and annoys the nurses terribly, and started telling him how, oh, no, you should take Clifford. You need to take little Clifford, the big red dog, home because he's just such a nuisance to the nurses, and he barks, and we can't have that. And, like, Clifford was alive, and told him Clifford was real, but he barks at night, and convinced him to take Clifford home. And like 2 days later, she passed away. And the day she passed away, there's the night nurse and the morning nurse. She waited until morning. And when the morning nurse came on shift, she literally looked at her and said, oh, good, you're here, and closed her eyes as if she was going to sleep. So she literally waited for the morning nurse because she didn't want to be the night nurse, and she didn't want the morning nurse to arrive for her shift and find her without her saying something to her. And she was absolutely not going to make that poor little boy come get his dog and have her had died in the bed with the dog, or to have the nurses take the dog away because she died there. She was going to make sure he got that dog home before she passed. So that's what I totally get what her mom was doing, because that's totally how my Annie Marion thought. My Annie Marion, if my Annie Marion had been in bed with her husband, she would have gotten out and no doubt laid down. She totally would have done that. So this is pretty sad. Does it get less sad? It gets less sad. Okay, so they get a house. Things are going, and she's kind of in hiding, but she does get to make clothes, and she does get to go to school. So it looks like things are looking up. But this is beautiful. It's a little sad because it does, it starts with her mom dying. It opens. But she seems like a real spunky prairie gal, this Hannah. And she's crazy for sewing, which sounds just like Mary and Laura and the sewing and putting the hems, the buttons, and designing the clothes. So this sounds pretty cool. Okay, so we'll read it. And that goes pretty fast because that was like 2 chapters. So that's fine. And her pa, since a little sad, he's a little, severe because, well, his wife died, and now he has to protect his poor little Chinese daughter, and everybody hates everybody. But this looks good. This looks good. It looks like there are some cheerful. I'm seeing here, yes, she does go to school, and it looks like the teacher is not horrible to her, so it looks like it'll be okay. So I'm going to go for it. We're going to read Prairie Lotus. And then when we get done with the Prairie Lotus thing, we'll have all of Rosa's stuff, and it will be fab. But yes, this is a big thing because, hello, the railroads. A lot of Chinese people came to America in the 1800s, and they really, for the most part, built the railroads. And so there were Chinatowns in every major city. And in many towns, people were really mean to them and didn't like them. Even though they built their railroad, you think they might be appreciative of the fact that the Chinese had just built them a railroad. Or, the fact that there was Chinatown and there was such lovely Chinese food and soup and such beautiful things that people made. But no. Some people just, can't please them. So this will be fascinating. This will be this lovely little, very Laura-esque little half-Chinese girl. So, it'll be very fun. We will do that, and I will finish my pie. So, yes, I have plenty of bonnets. I had to order more tin cups. You guys bought all the tin cups. Oh, lovely. So warm. So the fridge is good. The fridge, I think it's getting cold. So I have new stove, new fridge. It's just crazy. All this change. I'm like rearranging the whole kitchen. It's bananas. So there you are. So I will be here tomorrow, and we will read some more, and it will be fab. And like I said, I'll be doing my show September 24th, be doing my little show here, and we'll be doing things will be happening. And oh, tomorrow's Tuesday. We're doing rerun Tuesday, but next Tuesday is going to be huge. Next Tuesday is going to be huge. I've been talking to Karen. Yes, Karen Grassley, or Caroline Ingalls, and she's consented to do my show. It's very exciting! So yes, I will keep you posted on everything, but be sure to sign up for the newsletter, and be sure, check out the store, and go and visit all these lovely places online. Go to check out Nellie's and Walnut Grove and all these cool places. I will see you tomorrow, so wash your little hands, and wear your masks, and take care of each other, and I'll see you tomorrow.